Hi, everybody. Thanks for taking the time tonight. I prepared some slides. I also included the information of the group of questions that Alan had given me in advance that many of you submitted. And I have short answers to those, and that can lead into discussion. But I just have a small prepared deck of slides, and I hope you find value in this. And no better way to do this but to just get started. So I have no conflicts. You know, if you guys remember nothing else tonight, it's really important because we're all talking about, you know, being an underrepresented minority in a field that is incredibly white male Caucasian. And so there's some things that we all can manage every day, and some of them are to be on time. Late is not cool. Make them miss you when you're gone. Be irreplaceable due to your work ethic and your persona, and always be teachable and prepared. And that just shows that you're into continuous learning. And I love this image on the right of the slide, because you know, you don't need any talent to do all those things, and you'll be able to watch this again. So I'm not going to go through those, but I've seen this in many different ways, and I love it. You can win if you do those things, and it doesn't require much, and people will always respect you for doing those things. I want to tell you a little bit about myself. My mom and dad are those people holding myself and my twin brother. I'm being held by my father. He was a Mexican immigrant, no education, came here probably when he was 15 the first time, went back with money to Mexico, and then came back when he was 19 or 20, and then met my mom, got married. They had 5 boys. The last of us were the twins. And so my story is like yours, I think, many of yours. My parents were great role models. And we grew up in an amazing home that to me was like Camelot. And I miss both my parents. They're both passed, but my brothers are all still living. And I think it's important to start with these sorts of images to know that we're all like one another and will continue to be. And I think you'll hear from my story, it wasn't just all success. It was filled with some degree of hard knocks, but you know, it's about picking yourself up. So this next picture is a picture of my high school football team. I grew up in Southern California in Los Angeles, and we did really well. And if you see, many of the people on the team are African American or black, and so even though I grew up in a Mexican household, sometimes my internal conversation with myself, it sounds like I'm from South Central, because that's just kind of the vernacular of comfort that I have in myself, is to talk like the way I did a lot of talking and heard a lot of talking when I was growing up. This is a picture of my twin brother and myself. I'm the guy on the, I'm number 81, and that's right after we won the city championship in Los Angeles. And this is a picture of my wife today. You know, she's Caucasian, so this talk is not about like, it's about us and not about them, because my kids are half white. And so I just want people to know it's about everybody. It's about all of us, lifting everybody up. But you're going to see from my story, I've lived the Latino life in this environment, but I cannot deny who I am. I don't hate white people. My kids are half white, so I'm about everybody. And I do believe in meritocracy, meaning we all got to work hard and do it. And I didn't always work hard and do it, and it led me to have some of these hard knocks I think I'll share with you, and we'll go from there. So I like data and I like research. So I gave a talk just recently at the American Shoulder and Elbow Surgeons. I'm a member of that group, and they wanted to talk on cultural competency. So some of the slides I cherry picked from that talk, which was given in October in Chicago. And so is it really a thing to have underrepresented minorities in medicine? And of course, we would all say yes, because we're all in that. But there's also data that proves it. I'm probably singing to the choir with each of you, but just these 2 papers really quickly. Does diversity matter for health? This is a study out of Oakland from the National Bureau of Economic Research. Black male patients were significantly more likely to undergo preventive screening tests and agree to a flu shot if they were offered by black male physicians rather than white male physicians. So there's a piece of research right there. I wanted to start with the evidence for why we do what we do, why we're talking about what we're talking about, rather than just say, you know, hey, look, we got to do it, that sort of thing. I like being data driven, and this is my attempt at being there. And so then this other study on the right shows that African American and Latino patients who perceive racism in healthcare system were significantly more likely to prefer physicians of their own race. So at least there's real data and hard evidence that talks about this. So what does this say? What does the diverse workforce data say? Two different papers that you see here show improvements in patient-related outcomes we're seeing in professionals with culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds. And language concordance is another thing. Language concordant doctors and health system interventions seem to promote health in these two papers. So, I mean, you guys are like, oh, I don't want to hear about data. I don't want to hear about research. But I think this just helps us to set the stage for change that we're all hoping for. And if there's data, I think we can better go in sometimes an unemotional way to say what is it, you know. And so this is a funny thing. I put up there, who are we? So I showed you the picture of my parents. My dad was a Mexican immigrant. My mom's parents were Mexican immigrants, and she was born in this country. But so I'm pretty much Mexican American. I was born here, and my parents have Mexican culture. And I whacked on a piñata when I was a kid, and I get that. And so then I did my spit test, you know, a sputum DNA sample. And look, I'm 43%, my DNA at least is from Spain, Native American, Portuguese, French. I have a little bit of European Jewish in me, a little Northern African. So I know what I am, and I know culturally what I am, and really, who are we? You know, I just think that this was interesting. I wanted to share that with you. I don't know if that makes any sense to you, but it does to me a little bit. So why did I choose orthopedics? I did well in high school. I went to LAUSD, so maybe it was pretty easy to do well in high school in the 1970s up to 1980 when I graduated from high school. I'm 56 now. I had a brother who was an athletic trainer, and that's the picture of him on the right. My third oldest brother that you saw when he was much younger in the first picture, and he was an athletic trainer. My twin brother and I, we'd go to our high school football games on Friday nights, and then we go to his games on Saturdays when we were young. And I saw what he did, and I said, "Oh my God, Steve!" His name's Steve. Steve, that's really amazing what you do. That's so cool. Because I think there was a question from one of y'all, like, why did you pick ortho? So I'm telling you why. And I said, wow, I want to do what you do. And he said, my name's Ronald, but that's not really my name. Now people call me Ron, but he used to and still does call me Ronnie. He said, Ronnie, you're really smart. You want to become an orthopedic surgeon. And you know what my first question was? If you come from a family where your dad's a longshoreman, your mom works as an office manager at a jewelry store, you say, what's an orthopedic surgeon? We didn't have dinner parties with orthopedic surgeons. We had dinner parties with bricklayers and people who were cops and that sort of thing. That's who our cultural and social circle was, not orthopedic surgeons. So he told me more what it was, and so I had no idea, but I said, I'm going to do that. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to become an orthopedic surgeon, completely cluelessly, not knowing how hard it would be or whatever. And many of you are probably much more educated in terms of having had more greater knowledge, but I really honestly, clearly had no idea what I was getting into. I didn't know the degree of difficulty it would be to get there, but I do owe it to my older brother, Steve, kind of for the initial motivation. So then what's the journey? The journey was 2 years at Stanford. I got in Stanford out of, I went to Banning High School. If you're from the LA City schools, we were great in football then, and that's pretty much all we were great in. We're not even great in that anymore. But I got into Stanford, and my twin brother went to UCSB. So after 2 years at Stanford, I was doing okay. I hated it. It was the most boring place ever. And if some of you guys went to Stanford and love it, I'm sorry. I went to UCSB for a quarter of my junior year, the first quarter, and I said, my God, I'm never going back to Stanford. My twin brother's having a much better time, so I stayed with him, and I got my bachelor's degree there. So that's just an aside. You know, Stanford blows a lot of people off. I blew off Stanford, so that was probably my first success in life or something like that. That should elicit laughs, I hope. And so then I did well enough on the MCAT that I got into 2 medical schools out of 40 that I applied to. So I got a lot of denials, but I got into 2 of them, and the one I chose was University of Illinois. And so I did the 4 years there, but the first part of the boards that you guys call STEP were not easy for me. I didn't do that well, and I did not get into orthopedic. That's a huge failure, but I was pretty much undaunted. I came back to LA, and I did a general surgical internship at Harbor General. One of the greatest years of my life. There's a question later, how'd you like Harbor General? I'll talk more about Harbor General then. And then I did 2 years of orthopedic research, both at UCLA and at the Sepulveda VA. Sepulveda VA, it's in the Valley. And so in that time, I did a bunch of research. I got to know more people, and I made connections. And so some of you who are going through some of these similar, you know, I didn't do well in step 1. How do I get in? Well, you're listening to a guy who, you know, I hope you don't feel like I'm bragging, but I'm eminently successful. And my initiation into this whole thing was not a gigantic success. So then out of the back end of the 2 years of orthopedic research, I knew enough people at Harbor General. I was able to secure a spot in orthopedics at Harbor General. And boards part 1 were difficult. I actually got tuberculosis, yes. Living acting tuberculosis during my my chief year, my 4th year, but it's my 5th year of training. But it was really actually my 6th, my 7th, because I had done all this other research years and stuff. And so I was able to secure an amazing fellowship at the University of Pittsburgh for shoulder and sports medicine, with really successful and amazing teachers. Dr. Freddie Fu is still there, and he's a friend today. I finished there in 1996. So I started there in 95, and I got there, and I had failed my treatment for TB, my oral treatments, oral regimen. So I had to go into directly observed therapy to continue to treat my TB. So this is kind of crazy, right? And so I get the TB treatment. I'm dealing with these athletes at University of Pittsburgh in the professional teams, and I have to sneak away to go to the county hospital, have somebody see me take my pills. It was just crazy in the beginning, but I eventually got through the TB, and I've never had a recurrence, which is a knock on wood. That's an awesome thing. And also training me there was Dr. J.P. Warner, who's the head of shoulder surgery at Harvard now. Dr. Chris Harner, who's a big knee surgeon in Houston now. And so that was an amazing time. But I think, you know, I said it in a nutshell, but this journey was not easy. Lots of blows, lots of body blows. Didn't get into orthopedics, had to do a research, didn't do well on board. These are all things that we can all relate to, unless some of you folks on the phone are really good at test taking, and I thought I was, and I've become good since, but there was times that I had struggles, so maybe some of you, this resonates with you, and during the question period, we can talk more about some of that if you want. And I don't share that with everybody, but I want to share it with all you tonight, because we got to be transparent with each other and let each other know that it's not just success after success after success. So this was all 16 years after high school. I was finally done, and I finally got a job. So some of this was from another talk that I gave to the AOA, the American Orthopaedic Association, and all they get all the senior residents in orthopedics together, over some like 200, 250 every year. So in Boston in June, I gave a talk about like what jobs you get. So I wanted to make that point, and it was the point that I need to call you, because I'm trying to tell you guys my story. So after I finished University of Pittsburgh, I got a job back in LA with 2 orthopedic surgeons, and we were kind of pretty much in the East LA area, and these guys were great guys, but I just really, the practice wasn't for me. I had done 1 year of this fee-for-service private practice after the fellowship, and I really, in some ways, I wasn't getting I wasn't getting what I was told I was going to get. So you have to think forward. And I would be on call for a week at a time, and 3 hospitals with hip fractures, and three hip places I'd have to do hip fractures. And I'm not opposed to hard work, but this was just crazy. I would round each morning and then go see patients. And when I did sports and shoulders, at times the other partners were first billing themselves for my cases. And so you guys are med students and other stuff, and so some of this is not resonating with you, but you just got to know that it still doesn't get easier when you finish med school, and then it doesn't get easier when you finish orthopedics. It keeps being hard, and you keep thinking, you know, that there's trust, and sometimes it's not there. And these guys were Latinos like me, and so I just thought, man, it wasn't right for me. At that time, a different opportunity opened up at Kaiser Permanente, so I took it. It was very close to where I grew up, and so, you know, for every door that closes, another opens. And so hopefully this slide kind of tells you all that there's continued hiccups you might see, and you got to keep pounding the pavement and doing what you need to do to make your life successful. And it starts with you and your own internal drive. You know, you don't have to be afraid. You can start over, and it always gives you a new chance. So I don't know if that resonated with you, but so when I got to KP, when I got to Kaiser Permanente, you have to do 3 years to partnership in Southern California. The month after I became a partner, I hired on at the facility that was very near to the community that I was raised in. And so in many ways, I felt like a small town doc. I came back and I was doing operations on the kids' knees of folks that I went to high school with and stuff. So it was pretty amazing. So in the month after I became a partner, because there were a lot of older guys in the group, in our group at Kaiser Permanente in the South Bay, and there's a rule in Kaiser Permanente, you got to retire at 65. Some of you might say that's age discrimination, but that's just the way the partnership is, and I don't try and fight that, and I'm not there yet. So it wasn't my battle then. It's not my battle today. That's a different slide deck for another time. And so I became the orthopedic chief. And so then I managed at first 5 orthopedic surgeons. We grew it to 10 by the time I moved out of there. So I was orthopedic chief. I got there in '97. I became orthopedic chief a month after I was a partner in 2000. I was orthopedic chief for 9 years until 2009. And then I was given this other job, assistant area medical director of peri-op services for that medical center. And at that time it was 50 surgeons. So now instead of just managing 10 orthopedic surgeons in one department, I was managing several surgical departments, and now it's up to about 65 or 70 surgeons all told, from urologists to general surgeons to head and neck surgeons, et cetera. And then in 2000, and that was in 2009, and then in 2013, concurrently, I was given the job of regional orthopedic chief over all 13 medical centers, orthopedic surgeons, and over 200 orthopedic surgeons. So I manage orthopedic services across Southern California for all these orthopedic surgeons in all of Kaiser Permanente, over or greater than 50,000 square miles, from just south of Santa Barbara to the Mexican border, from the Pacific Coast all the way to the Inland Empire, all those medical centers and all those orthopedic surgeons. So I meet with the 13 medical center chiefs 5 to 6 times a year, and we plan out strategy, and we try and develop a care plan for 4.5 million members in Southern California who receive Kaiser Permanente care, the ones that might need orthopedic care. That's what we're managing to. And then in 2016, late 2016, early 2017, I became the interregional orthopedic chief. So I oversee orthopedic services at the Kaiser Permanente in Northern California, in Southern California, in Hawaii, in Oregon, in Washington, in the great state of Colorado, in the mid-Atlantic, which is Virginia and DC, and then in Georgia, where there's Kaiser Permanente. So I just meet with those chiefs, and together, it's not just me alone, together we try to develop a plan of care for orthopedic services throughout the nation of Kaiser Permanente. So all those places I just mentioned were the different regions of Kaiser Permanente. And then I've just recently gotten another job to help lead a professional team in the Major League Soccer in Los Angeles. And besides that, that's all kind of purely orthopedic. I have been the LA chapter of the Western Orthopaedic Association. I was a leadership fellow in the American Academy of Orthopaedic Surgeons. I'm currently on the presidential line of the California Orthopaedic Association, and I will be the president in 2020. And I'm on the board of directors of the American Academy of Orthopaedic Surgeons. And that's from a guy who didn't get into orthopedics right away. So never sell yourself short. Always believe you can do it. You just got to keep, put your head down and do your thing, and eventually you'll get there. And I, Teddy Roosevelt's my favorite American president. Walk tall and carry a big stick guy. And that's what he said. Big jobs usually go to the men who prove their ability to outgrow the small ones. I think over time here, I was just getting bigger and bigger jobs. So I don't know, I don't have a plan. I never had a plan to all this stuff. But I do know this next slide shows you that others have invested in my abilities and leadership. So these are just a listing of different courses I've taken over the years. And it's an exhaustive list, but it's not all of the courses I've had. But the one that's highlighted in light blue, they gave me the opportunity to go to Harvard Business School and be involved in an executive leadership program. It was two-week periods at HBS, and they treated us just like business school students. And so others invest in you over time if you continue to do the right work. And the picture on the right is the American Academy of Orthopaedic Surgeons Board of Directors, and I'm on the upper row on the right side. If you see me, one of the only dark dudes. But there's some females in there too, so that's great. And we're trying to get more diverse on the board, and that's an active thing we're pointing toward. And so I'm just really proud to have been a part of that group. I will go off of the board with the next AAOS meeting in Las Vegas in 2019. I'll get to a point where you guys can have questions too. So I did talk about meritocracy too. Some people think that's a four-letter word. This guy, John Gordon, talks about the power of positive leadership, and so you see there's a bunch of stuff there, and I think that this resonated with me because you saw my pathway. It was not filled with just complete success. There were some bumps in the road, and so there's time that I prayed a lot, had faith, and I'm just a simple Catholic guy, and there's times I had to have hope. There's times I was fighting the good fight. I was stubborn. I certainly refused to give up, ignore the critics. There was a in medical school, there was a guy who interviewed us all, and he said, "I think you're going to be a psychiatrist." I said, "I don't want to be a psychiatrist." He said, "No, I think that's what you're going to be." He said, "What do you think you want to be?" And I said, "I want to be an orthopedic surgeon." He said, "You'll never become an orthopedic surgeon." So I always remember that guy's face when I achieved something, because he thought I wasn't going to be that. And so I hope that resonates with you too. I don't think we should live our lives with a chip on our shoulders, but we should also live our lives to kind of prove that we belong. And I think the competency piece is the hard work and being good and being better than others. And you just have to continue to do the work. What does Bill Belichick say, the head coach of the New England Patriots? If you may hate that team. He says, "Do your job. Do your job." If you do your job, everybody else will benefit. So we all have to do our job as best as we can, and we get through it with all these other feelings, I think, too. Mentoring, tonight, I hope somebody gets something out of this. Just probably think I'm crazy. So who lifted me up? Who mentored me? Who have I mentored? So there's my dad before he died, and that's me and my brothers. That was at somebody's wedding. There's my mom before she passed, and there's my wife and kids when we were in Switzerland last year. There's some pictures of some people who have mentored me. This picture on the upper right, the guy right here with the scary eyes, that's George Girardi. That's his brother Joe Girardi, the manager of the New York Yankees for several years. Averaged 90 wins a year for 10 years, so 900 wins, and they still fired him. The silly move. But I knew the Girardis. I lived with George when we were med students at University of Illinois, so I had the great pleasure of meeting this amazing Italian family. So they mentored me. They took care of me. They took care of a Mexican-American boy when he was in Illinois and felt, lonely, lost, alone. This is J.P. Warner in this middle picture here. He was one of my teachers at University of Pittsburgh. Now he's one of the most famous shoulder surgeons in the world. This is a bunch of us at the San Diego Shoulder Institute meeting that happens every year, and I'm a very proud member of the planning committee of that group. This is Freddie Fu down here, who is one of the most amazing knee surgeons in the world, and he will tell you about that too. So the Girardis are Italian. JP's a Jewish guy from New York. Freddie Fu, clearly a Chinese guy from Hong Kong. And this is John Lynn Salata, who was my co-fellow, and this is overlooking I think it's the Danube River in Budapest. You know, one side's Buda, the other side's Pest. That's how they get the name Budapest. And so this is Jake Ashkanian, an Armenian man. He was the guy who hired me at Kaiser Permanente that I talked of so fondly. He believed in me. He was the one who appointed me chief a month after my 3 years of pre-partnership, and I became a partner in the group. And so Italian, Jewish guy, Chinese guy, Armenian guy. You got to get the mentorship with others where you can. Certainly my parents are Mexican Americans, but all the rest of these people weren't, and I certainly took their friendship, their mentoring on. So who have I mentored? These are guys that are younger partners in my group. Dr. Furuhar is a Persian American, John Jin Lee, so he's a hand surgeon out of Philly, but from LA. He's John Jin Lee is a total joint surgeon out of Southern California too, but he got some great training at USC and other places. Korean, so I'm mentoring a Persian, a Korean American. This is Sandy Schwartz, Sandy Schmidt before, so she was a junior resident to me, and I met her when she was a med student, and she got to know more about orthopedics. Now she's a great trauma surgeon at trauma orthopedist at UC San Diego, and just an overall great person. And she said, when I met Ron and he talked to me about orthopedics and I was doing a rotation, that's what got me into orthopedics. I think she would tell you that still. I hope I'm not being made a liar. And then this is Charles, who's a senior medical student at the University of California, Irvine. Maybe some of you know him if you're at that school too. I don't know who's on the line. And he's a great guy, and I've taken the time to work with him and do research with him in the last year when he took time off and did research for a whole year. And so, and then that's me giving a talk to NMF just earlier this year and talking about all this too. So I think I'm trying to mentor you guys if you get any value out of this, and I've been involved with others. So I think it comes from all different types, and you got to get it where you can, and all people have value, understanding, and knowledge that they can impart on others. And so I think that's what I think I'm trying to attempt to say with this slide. So how does it feel to be a person of color in ortho? That was a question. So I first wrote, ha ha ha, that's so funny. That's like a joke question, right? Because there's very few of us, and lonely, but not really. I have 4 brothers who has time for work friends, you know, and really to me, I'm not thinking about that. I'm only thinking about how to outwork everybody. I'm not really the smartest guy. I just don't need that much sleep, and I know that I can outwork pretty much a lot of people. And, you know, by the way, approximately 1% of orthopedic doctors are Hispanic. Like you know, who's the 1%er? I guess that's me. And so this is a study that was out of JBJS by Okiki, Kanu Okiki. He's actually an orthopedic surgeon at Kaiser Permanente in Hawaii, and he's a personal friend. And he did this study while he was at Harvard orthopedic program. So this just showed that orthopedics at that point, when he studied some data in 1990, 2008, orthopedics was significantly less diverse than all other residencies during that time period. And residencies have gotten better, because there's a question some of you asked later, are they seeking out minorities and underrepresented groups? And I think they are more, but it's still on the low side. But certainly orthopedic surgeons, I was just at an orthopedic board meeting last weekend in Chicago, and we looked at the current data, and that number still resonates with me, the 1%er piece. So pretty amazing, pretty small, pretty low, but I mean, I'm trying to get stuff done. And so I don't think about that as much. So this is part of these next 2 slides are slides that I gave to that same group when I gave the talk in Boston at AOA, and these are like, how do you do well? How do you do well as a young person in orthopedics? And I think I was talking about when you get your job, but I think the themes I think are the same. So this is about junior pre-partners, but it could be junior residents in orthopedics or people like yourself who are trying to impress people on size. You know, a person finishes their order day early and they offer to kind of go into another room and help out. That's being helpful. These are good things. These are things that can help you. A person volunteers to be a department leader of a committee. A person asks for your opinion on a difficult case, and you provide an honest, earnest opinion. A person provides you an opinion, a difficult case you ask about, because you're asking. You're not always assuming you know everything. You're willing to show vulnerability and actually want to take on stuff and ask for help, because that's a critical thing too. I didn't want that to happen yet. And then you confidentially provide info about another member who's verbally abusive to staff. We got to be kind to one another. We got to be nice. So you can't let it happen in a vacuum. We can't chuckle and laugh when it's not about you, when it's about somebody else. And I think you are all probably incredibly nice people, and this none of that the negative side of that bullet point would never apply to you. But I think hopefully all this stuff resonates, because it's asking the question, how can I do good? I think these show behaviors that are good behaviors that will help you throughout your life, whether it's in the specific scenario of you being a pre-partner in a group, or a person in med school who's trying to help a team, or a person in a residency who's trying to help the team. So pre-partner doesn't ask for paid, protected time for every single piece of extra work he or she's volunteered for. I get that all the time as a person who manages people. Hey, you know, I'm doing this research. Can you pay me extra? Do you think I'm special? I just worked hard, and I never asked for any of that. And I would do stuff in the cracks of time at night when my kids, they're going to probably pop in here and say, hey, Dad, what are you doing? And I'm going to say, I'm talking to all these nice people. And so leave, go away. But I have kids, so I would wait for them to go to sleep and I'd do the research. I wouldn't say, then I wouldn't go to my boss, that guy, Dr. Ishkanian, who hired me, and say, Dr. Ishkanian, can you pay me extra? No, I just did it because I wanted to do it, because I have self-motivation. And so everybody who wants something extra for like basic work, that doesn't resonate well with the people you're trying to impress. And some of you might maybe disagree with some of these things, but I'm just giving you my opinion because somebody has to give opinions. So these are bad signs. Person does the shoulder cases even though they're hired as a foot and ankle, and were asked to do shoulder cases, asked not to do shoulder cases earlier. Then you get a call from the OR saying that person is doing a difficult shoulder case and can't find the proximal humerus. That's like fraudulent. Don't do stuff we're not asking you to do. Know your limitations, I guess, is the theme of that point. Pre-partner shows up late to clinic every day. Don't be late. That's why that was early on. If you do remember nothing else, be on time. Always shows up on chart delinquency list. That's just kind of showing you don't care about the rules, and there's rules for all of us. People always say, Dr. Navarro, why don't you do this in Kaiser Permanente? And I say, it's not called Ron Navarro Medical Center. It's called Kaiser Permanente. I'm living within the rules of the organization. The rules cannot be changed just for me because I think I'm the most brilliant, brightest person who stepped on the earth. And that's what, some people think that about themselves. None of you nice people on the phone, but I'm just trying to help you guys out and show you behaviors that really don't resonate with other people very well. Pre-partner never has pre-op orders ready for cases, blowing the pre-op holding throughput. The person who is well-trained still does bad things. Pre-partner signs out on a case to go skiing, says there's no need to round. You, as the on-call doc the next day, get a call from a hospital saying the joint cultures on this case have been positive for days, and when are you going to wash out the joint? These are things. You just got to be diligent. You got to do your job. You can't say, it's 5 o'clock, I got to go home. We take the Hippocratic Oath. It's about doing the work. And so that's what you got to live into, So I know those are probably bummer slides. You're like, why did he say that to me? I hate him. So here, KP research on possible race and disparity, and Adan had mentioned this. I've been doing this work to see how we as an organization stand up. So this is one of the first papers we did on it was on osteoporosis, and we were looking to see if we were minimizing disparities in care. And so this is a clin ortho. Or a core paper. This next paper we published on ACL and racial variation, whether it influenced stuff, and this was in the RED journal, some of you call it, the American Journal of Sports Medicine. And the very last paper just got published, and there's Kano Ukiki. I remember I quoted him in an earlier slide. He did this paper with me where he was the first author and I was the senior or last author, and we looked at the association between race and ethnicity and hip fracture outcomes in the university insured population. So I have a personal interest in this stuff to kind of look at ourselves, myself, but not myself individually, but myself in terms of my organization to see how we're doing. And we're going to continue to come out with these papers to see how we're doing because we want to iterate and get better on this stuff. I think I'm almost done. You guys can ask questions. Let's see what time it is, 7:09. So what does diversity have to do with leadership? Well, I think this is another one of those singing to the choir points, and you guys will say, yeah, great, I'm glad this guy made these points. When you bring in diversity, it's an organizational asset. It is the possible dissenting opinion. It avoids groupthink. If everybody's thinking the same thing, nobody's thinking. So that's whether you're watching Fox News and everybody's thinking the same thing, or CNN where you're thinking the same thing. We're allowed to have discourse. We should all respectfully agree and sometimes disagree, and all sides should be respected. It's diversity of thought. And when you bring in a diverse opinions, there's more robust decision making, and that leads ultimately for the organization to better implementation, more effective organizations, and more rapid adoption. And it should be synergistic with a performance culture. If diversity enhances outcomes, it enhances value, and that's to the point of if value equals quality over cost. That's at Michael Porter, Harvard Business School speak. If value equals quality over cost or outcomes over cost, and you're improving the outcomes, as I just pointed out in this whole slide, you're increasing the value because the numerator is going up and the denominator is staying the same. And Kaiser Permanente is always constantly winning these Diversity Inc. Awards for companies with good diversity. So that's a little bragging for the team. So this will resonate with you guys. This is equality. Everybody gets something to ride, but they don't all ride the same thing. This is equity. You know, everybody gets something to ride that helps them, because now the bike is small for this person, appropriately sized for this person, appropriately seated for this person, whereas in the initial example, this person didn't get to ride the bike. So we're all probably striving for this, equity, and people think equality is good, equity is even better. Almost done, folks. So here's your questions. Am I too old to become an orthopedic surgeon if I become matriculating in school by 29? You're never too old. You always have to be competitive. I'm going to give you the short answers, and you can ask questions in about 5 minutes. How to get into ortho residency? Good grades, good scores, sub-Is, letters of recommendation, and research. How do you manage your time to study in medical school and do well? Don't procrastinate. I procrastinate a lot. I suffered. And don't procrastinate. It's the easiest thing to say. You know, your mom and dad always told you that, and now you actually have to listen, even though they're not around. Day in the life of an orthopedic surgeon. Here's a week. On Monday, I do administrative time. On Tuesday, I operate for 10 hours. On Wednesday, I do half day of clinic in the morning, administrative time in the afternoon. On Thursday, it's a sacrosanct clinic day all the time, and with tons of extra patients, and I never complain if ads are given. And on Friday, I do administrative time. So that's me at a 50% time, and I still do over 250 cases a year. So something surprising you didn't think would be part of my role, adult babysitting. When you're an administrative physician, you do a lot of adult babysitting because people, when even they get old and are highly intelligent, still kind of act like children sometimes. So it's probably the worst part of any administrative leadership job in anything. And this is more about other stuff, not about leadership, but many of you will be leaders someday. So I'm just warning you now. It would be great to know what different mindsets you had to be successful in my job. You got to be hungry. Sometimes I'm ghetto. Sometimes I'm persistent. Sometimes I'm angry, and many times I'm ambitious. Not the four-letter word ambitious. Just I want to do better. I want to, continue to strive for more new challenges, which sometimes may mean new positions, which might pay me more money. If ambitious is bad, I don't know, but I'm just trying to do my thing. What's the most satisfying aspect of orthopedic surgeon? For me personally, we fix stuff. It's like construction. You know who the most satisfied people in the world are? Construction workers. They build a home, move on to the next home. They don't have to go back to that last home. I could never do internal medicine. People, you got to keep reminding them, take your antihypertensives, take your I don't want to babysit adults. I just already said that in leadership. And I want to fix it and move on, move to the next thing because it's fixed well and it usually doesn't break. We all have complications though, but the better ones have less. For a medical student interested in pursuing surgical specialty, how would you recommend I spend my summer first and second years? What do I do to make myself competitive? Research and relationships, that's what this is all about. That leads to recognition and lots of good letters of recommendation, LORs, and phone calls to friends who are residency directors. So if I get to know you and I know that you're applying to USC residency program and I know Seth Gamrat is going to interview you, I can call him the night before and say, Seth, person X is going to be interviewing with you. He or she is the greatest person ever, and Seth will remember you out of the other 50 people he interviews that day because Ron Navarro called him, and I have a personal relationship with Seth. That is critical. So you got to make relationships with people who eventually influence your time in interviews, if you get interviews, and I think you will. It's a very small club, orthopedics is. Also, tests are not your forte, and asking like what you do, do test-taking practice to increase the hopes of a good score. If you don't do well in something, you got to fix it by practice. I always tell my kids, this is not Allen Iverson. Practice, who needs practice? Everybody does, except Allen Iverson. Right? If you know the contextually what I'm talking about, he always said practice, who needs practice. Okay, almost done. Are residency programs looking to recruit more underrepresented minorities in their programs? Yes, and minimum standards still apply. You got to be good. They're not going to let you in with really super low stuff, so you got to try and still strive. And you see, Ron Navarro didn't get in right away and fought through and got in because he went and improved himself. So if anybody should be a possible case for hope, it could be maybe me. If your step 1 score isn't very competitive, how do you make up for that? Honors and surgical rotations, do well in step 2 and sub-Is. How do orthopedic programs view students who receive an additional degree, a master's? If it's a supplement, that it's helpful. They will read between the lines if it's due to not getting in right after undergrad. So, but if you do well in steps, surgical rotations, and sub-Is, it's a non-issue down the line. So the master's alone isn't an issue. It's just that if you didn't get into orthopedics right out of or if you didn't get into med school right out of undergrad and you did the master's because of that, they can figure that out. And I'm not dogging anybody, but that might be the case. But if it's just, hey, I did a master's and I didn't even try to go to med school, then great, you did a master's. It should be a non-issue. How many sub-Is should a fourth-year medical student be doing? 2 to 3 at most. This is up to a bunch of different people's opinions, but that's what I would say because you have to do all the rest of your stuff. And it's hard to travel and it costs money to travel and all that stuff. Any advice how to go about choosing your sub-I locations? Do where you want to get into. You don't do a sub-I in Montana if you never want to live there. But hopefully you did well at your local ortho rotation because so that's out. You don't really necessarily have to do a sub-I there, hopefully, because they already know you. They're like, that person's the greatest person in the world. Go out and find yourself, but we're still going to take you into our ortho program because you impressed the heck out of us. And then do 2 elsewhere and not feel like you blew the local place off if you want to consider that location. So any advice on how to stand out during the sub-Is? This is the hardest thing. Be helpful and available. It's the other stuff. Never be late. Don't walk in and saying, hey, what do you guys got for me? Oh, did you read on the case? No, I didn't read on the case. Well, they won't like you. Okay, read up on the topics. Let the gunner speak first and play off that. I know you want to get in, but don't be the first one to answer every time. If you know the answer, go for it, but don't be the gunner. Let the gunner hit them, smack themselves in the face, and you go in and clean up their mess. Read body language too. Good EQ helps. If you don't have good emotional intelligence, you might be in trouble because if the resident who you'll mainly hang out with doesn't want you to sit close to them, you keep sitting close to them, they won't like you. So you have to be able to read people well. This is not a time to seek special considerations. Hey, I got a Coldplay concert tonight. Do you mind if I leave early? That's not good. That's not good in sub-Is. They will judge you. They will judge you. Don't get too relaxed out after work parties and drink too much and act a fool because they'll go, that's the one who can't handle their liquor. Some of you don't even drink at all, but a lot of the residents will invite you to their parties if they like you, and that's not a time to blow it. It's a time to kind of get to know people more. It's an admittedly hard and awkward and artificial setting. Not everybody will like you. Be yourself and genuine. They want reliable and dependable. They want reliable and dependable. If you can take work off the resident's plate, you are golden. Whatever that work may be. You're not going to do the case for them, but if you get other work out of their way, that person is really helpful. We want them in our program. That's the vital difference between the good and the bad. I don't expect you to be the walking textbook of orthopedics. What's the difference between training an academic ortho program, community program, brainy versus good and technical surgeons? And that's just my slant. I think I trained at a fantastic county program at Harvard General, and I learned to operate because there was nobody there to help me in the middle of the night, and I'm the poor indigent who I got to operate on. It wasn't always the best for them, but certainly I learned to be confident and incredibly confident. But then I went to a brainy academic program for my fellowship so I could learn how to do research better and that sort of thing. So maybe it's a combination of ortho residency and your fellowship. Fellowships teach you more how to do specialized stuff too. How'd you like your training at UCL? Harvard, UCLA, best of times and worst times. Hardest work ever, made great camaraderie, it made me who I am, and for that I'm grateful. And there's a part of myself I hate because it teaches you to really deal with hard, nasty stuff, and that makes a part of you be kind of like know how to deal with hard, nasty stuff. And you guys maybe get what I mean. Why sports for subspecialty? Hey, don't forget about the shoulder. You see my brother, athletic trainer story for that. I already explained that to you. So here's some quotes for me done. I have a dream that my 4 little children one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, by the content of their character. We got to get there. We're not there yet. A great guy who just passed, Johnny McCain. Despite our differences, much more unites us than divides us. We are fellow Americans. Like what I was saying earlier, my wife, she's white. I don't hate white people. I just wanted to figure out how to get through in a white world, being a guy who thinks like maybe sometimes like an African American in his head, or like a Mexican immigrant in his head. But you just got to figure out. Thought for the day: we find comfort among those of us who agree with us, growth among those who don't. So sometimes the most difficult people in your life will make you grow the most. So don't always take it to heart. Just know that you're always growing. It's a new time. You guys know REM, it's the end of the world as we know it. That's what Michael Stipe says, and I feel fine. I hope you do too. Thank you very much. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Can I take questions?
So we do have a couple questions in the chat box that I'd like to go through. So if you could choose any career path, knowing what you know now, would you still choose orthopedic surgery again?
Yeah, for the most part, yes. I wasn't exposed to mergers, acquisitions, and investment banking, and I have friends who were fraternity brothers at UC Santa Barbara who went and did that, and they have billions of dollars, and they're retired already, but they don't ever enjoy the benefits of helping people. You know, we all say, I want to go into medicine to help people, and it almost becomes trite. You know, you see that's a picture of me. That's Zlatan right behind me. And I made ESPN on that. And so I wouldn't do anything else. This is my life. I'm not a second guesser. And I've had, if I died tomorrow, I'm a blessed person. I have the most wonderful family, daughters, and lovely wife who still puts up with me. And no, I wouldn't pick anything different. I like I say, I'm not a second guesser.
Another person, a similar question that was already asked, but I want to see if you have any other thoughts. Have you found that it is more challenging for older students that are greater than 35 years old to match into competitive residencies such as orthopedics or even pediatric surgery?
I think it all depends upon your. I think people are good with older students because you bring a degree of maturity, and that's probably a welcome change to people who are just the 4 years of college, 4 years of med school, then right to the residency. So it brings a different flavor to the residency group because it creates a mixture of people. As long as your grades are good, I mean, whatever the challenge is, if you were able to meet the challenge with the academic requirements and the scores and the letters, they don't necessarily think, oh, that's an older person, I don't want them. I don't think that's an issue. I think now our society is so much more open. I could be wrong, but I think age discrimination is less a concern than gender and other discriminatory subconscious biases that admissions committees would have in residency programs. But once again, it's just one person's opinion.
Another side question to that, are there any particular residency programs that are actively seeking to diversify their programs in your experience?
I think all the top ones think about it the most. I think that the cloistered ones in some out-of-the-way places that are probably a little bit more homogeneous in nature, they're probably less active, but in big cities, they want to get mixtures of people. Columbia, HSS, they're looking for women and for underrepresented minority groups and whatnot. So I think you'll find it. I don't think they take them if they have bad bad grades though. You have to bring it on the other side, the grades or the letters or the score, the test taking scores that qualify you minimally. They're not going to give you like a break, you know what I mean? They want you, but you got to bring it just like the white guy does with the scores. Thank you.
What books, podcasts, and or leadership books do you recommend? Do you have a personal favorite?
That's a great question. You know, I've been reading this book by that's right here by Antonin Scalia. I'm probably like a frustrated lawyer or something. Not that I wanted to do that and didn't get. I just didn't do. I like both sides winning. So there's one piece of the law I hate because somebody always loses and somebody wins with the law. And if I win as a surgeon, the patient wins too. So it's a double win rather than win-win, win-loss. But he's a real thoughtful guy. There's another book. Man, I'm not going to be able to find it right here. That's that there's the leadership books. Oh gosh, if you don't mind, I'd like to write them down and get the titles. I'm not good at this extemporaneous memory. I'm 56. But there's a book by a composer that talks about everything being possible. Living in the possibility, and it was really impactful for me. And he came and he all taught us how to sing in German when he spoke to us. And his book has stuff about that, but he broke it down into like component parts. And so it's about possibility and stuff like that. So it was just amazing. But I would love to write those down and get those to you, and then you can see them later.
I'll share them once I receive them with the people that registered. Another question, another person asked, what was your backup plan if you couldn't make it into medical school, if you had a backup plan? What was that thought process like?
Great question. I think I would have kept trying. I didn't. I got in, so I didn't have to think about it. But more importantly, or the same thing, when I was thinking I wasn't going to get into orthopedics, so I took a couple whiffs at that and then finally got in the 2 years of doing the research. I was going to go to flight school in the Navy and then figure out if I could I would become a flight surgeon and then see if I could backdoor into some of the naval orthopedic residencies after that by doing good work. And I wanted to, fly a plane and, maybe shoot at stuff or something. Sort of patriotic. So that was the plan. But to medical school, I don't know. I don't know what I would have done. Maybe I would have probably done a master's route to see. I think when I was younger, I'm much older than all the people probably on the phone. So there were less of those kind of finishing programs, if you will, that you can go do a master's that's near a great medical school, and you're kind of working with people and trying to engender yourself into that by doing good work. The same stuff I just emphasized: do good work, get good grades, and then if they say, "Wow, this person's really great," and they take you into the medical. So they didn't have as many of those, so that wasn't an option. So I didn't answer the question about medical school. I'm sorry.
It's all right. How did you manage procrastination?
I still have a lot of procrastination. I tell my wife all the time, I'm not doing it in the last minute. I'm doing it in the only minute. So I try and keep myself incredibly busy. I take on more work, so I'm always facing deadlines. If I have no deadlines but one and I have 3 weeks to complete it, I'll wait for the 3 weeks. So I put myself in an artificially deadline position all the time, and I'm just figuring this out because you asked it. I never actually verbalized this to myself, so thank you who asked that question, because I'm figuring myself out. You're my psychiatrist. And so I think I take on so much work because that means I always have to be finishing stuff, because right now I have like 3 papers to read, another paper to write. I have grades or applicants for a scholarship I have to grade before the weekend. And so I always have stuff burning, so I always have to do stuff. So I'm getting things done well before the deadlines, because I know there's other things that have to be well before those next deadlines. So it's like, and if you take psychology, it's a psychiatry reaction formation. I'm doing things to fight the procrastination by overburdening myself with deadlines. It's probably a sick way of doing things. So.
And then our last question of the night. Has it been hard to learn to use your voice to advocate for the field? You talk so much about data on the positives of diversity, and we thank you for showing that. But how do you learn to grow your voice even when issues can be controversial?
No, I got a big mouth, and I'm the guy in the room who always says the emperor's wearing no clothes. So I don't have a problem calling people out, calling issues out. So just recently at the board meeting, And this isn't women's issues versus minority issues, but we were talking about more diversity, and they said we're putting members of the women's diversity group on this other committee, and we'll think that will help with the issue of more women in a certain committee. And I said, being a member representing a minority, you also have to think of the Hispanic males, because they weren't in this country dogging all the women. They're getting dogged themselves. So, there's more than one group that needs to be advocated for. So I wasn't not advocating for the women. I was just advocating for more of us, because we all have to help each other up. And so they said, oh, you're right, we'll add members of another subcommittee to foot into that. So I just tell it like I see it. And if people don't like me, they might not want me on their committee next time. But like I said, I got 4 brothers. I'm not looking for friends.
Well, thank you so very much, Dr. Navarro. I really appreciated all the comments on the chats are really appreciative also. I would also like to thank NMF, the National Medical Fellowships, for connecting us with you, and we're looking forward to having more of these types of webinars in the future. Thank you, everyone, for joining in. Thank you so much again, Dr. Navarro.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Thank you all for joining, guys. Hope it was helpful.